Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give it a minute of strained, awkward silence while we wait for any stragglers to arrive, and then we'll get started. Numbers are still creeping up, so just give it a few more seconds.
Everyone get settled, get their coffee on the go, and
on the go. Should have it ready by now, Johnny. Blimey. Right, okay, that's enough awkward silence for me. So welcome everybody. Good afternoon. This is the second in a series of technical insight webinars for on behalf of the Drainage and Water Searches Network, or DWSN, as you can see on the slide in front of you. The idea is that we are talking about some of the complex issues to deal with CON29DW residential and commercial, so our drainage and water reports. We did one about a month ago now, is it? And it proved surprisingly popular. So we're back with the second one. As I say, it's going to be a series and we'll go on from there. Just in terms of housekeeping to begin with, I'm presenting from an office and we haven't got any fire alarms planned. Johnny looks to be presenting from some sort of futuristic minimalist kind of spaceship.
It's an IKEA warehouse, I think.
Oh, it's all IKEA warehouse. Yeah. Apologies. Well, he's locked in an IKEA warehouse, and apparently there's no fire alarms planned there either. So that's all good. So we shouldn't have any interruptions in that regard. In terms of questions, the Q&A is open. Those who can work out how to use it in Teams, I'm sure most of you know by now. Please, type any questions in as we go along. I'll be monitoring those as Johnny is talking. And, if I think it's appropriate to interrupt him, I will do so at that particular point, or we'll pick them all up at the end. So that is the plan. You can now see on the screen the two of us. I did have a question, Johnny. What's the badge you're wearing on the picture?
Okay. The badge I'm wearing on the picture is a commemorative solid silver lapel badge.
Solid silver.
For being a kidney donor.
Oh, wow!
I donated a kidney to my partner, and you get a lollipop, get sent home with a little silver badge.
Wow!
That's about it, really. Yeah.
That's a better story than I was expecting. I thought it might be a Peter badge or something. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a good conversation starter, I guess. So yeah, share the spare. Share the spare.
Good for you, mate. Good for you. That's fantastic. Sorry, folks. I digress. I didn't even introduce ourselves, so I'm Owen Davis.
Oh, sorry.
I have go back. I have the pleasure of chairing the Drainage and Water Searches Network board of directors. But my day job is with Severn Trent Searches. I'm the business development manager at Severn Trent Searches. Johnny, and you can introduce yourself now.
Yeah, similarly, try to develop business at Geodesys, which is part of Anglian Water. So we just have a searches name called Geodesys. Some of you may know us, and also DWSN member. So and I've just got the dubious task of presenting the slides that the members collectively have put together to try and help you guys to understand some of the complexities around the commercial.
Yeah, I haven't even told you the title of the webinar. So it is about the CON29DW Commercial. Clearly, with two products we talk about in DWSN, the CON29DW Residential and Commercial. This is on the commercial. For those of you who don't know, DWSN it's an industry body that represents those people that put together the residential and commercial searches. We have now been around for 10 years. It's our 10-year anniversary this year. So happy birthday, us, that's all I can say. We do loads of work with key stakeholders around the industry and the like, but part of the fun is that we get to present stuff like this to you guys on the complexities of the products. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Johnny, and I'll just monitor the Q&A while he talks. So over to you, sir.
Thanks, Owen. Excellent. Here we go, guys. So we've got you 2:30. It's 5 past already. We'll really try and keep to that. We appreciate you so much giving up that time, that half an hour of time or more to us, because we know you're busy. Hopefully you're busy anyway. Hopefully transactions are picking up. So we'll get straight to it. So a little bit of an introduction of what we're gonna do today, and it's quite straightforward and quite simple. We won't keep you too long. So this introduction, just to set the scene. Then I'm going to go through some elements of the commercial, the CON29DW Commercial, just to point out some of the differences between it and the residential version. And then we'll do some questions at the end, should you have any, but feel free to use the Q&A to ask some questions. So what are we going to do? It's just worth pointing out, what we're not going to cover today are the standard questions that are part of the residential CON29DW. So we're just going to deal with additional questions. So we do have another webinar we did a few months ago, a month or so ago, 6 weeks ago, that was very successfully attended, and we've got a recording of that on the DWSN website should you want to revisit it, and that picks apart the individual questions. But today we're going to concentrate on what's so different about the commercial and some of the nuances that the commercial demands from you to help us really create a good product for you. So we're going to deal with the additional questions and a little bit of background to them. As you can see there's trade effluent, manhole data, really gripping stuff, I know, and then a little bit on way leaves and easements. Then we're going to move on to what it is you can do, a bit of an insight that will help the producers of the report get a report back to you as quickly as possible. So we're trying not to be bossy there or dictatorial. We're just saying if you can help with these couple of areas, which you can see on the screen there, and I'll talk those through, it will really help us get a report back to you as accurately and as quickly as possible. And then finally, just I think one slide, possibly two, just on common queries that we see and how, again, you can help, or the sorts of questions we may come back to you with the query on. So just to inform you that when you've got a commercial transaction and you're ordering a CON29DW commercial, a couple of things to look out for, and hopefully will help things get back to you, nice and promptly. So first of all, the additional questions. What are there that's in a CON29DW commercial that is over and above the residential version? There's three areas. So two are just covered off here, but with a little bit of narrative from me. So the first one is trade effluent. So what is trade effluent, and why is it worth knowing that there is an existing consent to discharge? Well, without getting too techie, the Water Industry Act of 91 said that any wastewater produced on a premises, a trade premises, in pursuit of its business, its trade, is defined as trade effluent. Almost almost even if it's just slightly tainted water, if it's part of that business or trade, then it needs a trade effluent. It may need a trade effluent license. So the commercial product answers this question. And it's just really important to make this distinction, so that the potential or future buyer of the business and its premises knows if that business had a trade effluent consent granted to it. It does not mean that the new owner has got a trade effluent consent. The consent is to the business, to the person, and not to the premises. I hope that makes sense. But it's a really good indicator, isn't it? We can all think of analogies and examples. If you were launching a butcher's and you needed a trade effluent for waste at a butcher's, water waste, and then you're going to open a butcher's just the same, great stuff. You do have to apply for it and get it for yourself, but you know it's going to get granted. Likewise, if a trade effluent is attached to a metalworks manufacturing business, but you're going to change it into a hairdresser's, there probably isn't too much of a connection, but at least you know it's been applied for. There's some things around the premises that will lead you to potentially getting a successful grant of a trade effluent license in the future, even though the business is changing. Trade effluent doesn't cover off domestic sewerage. So if the property's got a toilet, staff toilet, things like that, or a little canteen or stuff using it, then that's not treated as trade effluent. It's very much to do with liquid waste discharged into those public sewers from your business or your industrial process. So If your client's proposed business involves the manufacture of processing of materials, chemicals, food and drink, maybe it's a car wash, a laundromat, any kind of wastewater like that, it's likely to be considered as trade effluent, and you need a trade effluent consent. But we will at least be able to tell you if there was one on that business premises previously. Okay, so I forgot to bring it up. There's a lovely picture of some trade effluents in a testing bottle. It looks like something else to me, but it is trade effluent, I'm told. Then there is manhole data. So I might need to go backwards and forwards. Yeah, so manhole data. So this is useful information surrounding the premises and or maybe within the boundary of the premises, but maybe not, about manhole information. So there's quite a lot. There's just a single image here, but you can see them on the map, and you can see that you can get information about the manhole data that's relevant to things like depth and invert levels. Yeah, someone's put up a sort of surprise face emoji just come up there, because it's hard to sort of get your head around here. But if the property is wishing to be developed in some way, this will be useful to someone in that process, I guarantee you. So they may need to tap into where there's a decent and appropriate sized manhole and public drain with the correct drop off and the depth and everything that they need, and this information is quite useful for them. Now I must at this point just one caveat: it's where available. So manhole data and one other that I'm going to come on to in a sec, the way leaves and easements, may not always be available. It's quite a complex set of information, and some of the members of the DWSN may not be in a position to provide this data. So just one caveat on that. Speak to your member, whoever you're ordering from. Could be me, could be Owen's company. Just speak to them and they'll be able to inform you. So that's trade effluent consent and manhole data. That's two of the three additional areas. The third one is way leaves and easements, and again, where available. So a bit of an ancient kind of wording, really, and we want to ensure that you're clear on what the meaning of both of those are. They both relate to access requirements. Generally utility companies, but it can be others, but of course we're a utility company. Pipes, poles, equipments, cables, stuff that's laid or installed on private land as a necessity of reasonable infrastructure that utility company needs. So there are some other simpler types that we won't detail in. It could be there's a way leave for a path for public access across the corner of a field, something like that. But we won't detail that. This is really about things like assets, if you like, equipment, either underground or above ground. But they're slightly different, and they can be easily confused. So a way leave is granted to the person who owns the land, and that can be terminated either by the person or by the utility company. It's known by the person. So it's not a given that will stay in place when the land changes hands. But an easement relates to the land itself and is permanent. So some are put in place via compulsory purchase powers. This will be, the regulated business and the government and all those sort of quangos that are control of this kind of thing can say, okay, that's a necessary way leave. You've got to have that across your land, I'm afraid, sort of like a compulsory purchase of a property, because otherwise there's a 200-mile diversion and £10 million extra cost. I'm making these figures up, of course, but I'm just giving you an example. So some of them are necessary way leaves, and you need to know if they're there on a piece of land or a property that you're buying for your client. So it's really, ahead of a purchase, it's helpful to know, apart from the practical nature of knowing if there are any pipes running through the land. Not only the fact that there's access needed, but you can't go building over it and things like that. But there may be circumstances when you can, but only again by approaching the utility company. And if it's pipes under the land, you probably wouldn't. So it can be quite complex. The information is available at times for members, but not always. Again, just must check that. But it's a really useful additional bit of information that if it gets missed, could have some implications to the new buyer. Oh, I keep forgetting to do it, to build my slides. Apologies. So it can be nice and graphically correct and straight, like that one in that example, or meandering pipes going through the countryside through social necessity. I'm going to say, if the water companies or electric or gas need those pipelines to service our needs, then that's why they're there. Okay. So additional questions, we've just sort of covered those off. So trade effluent, manhole data, and the way leaves and easements. I hope that's quite clear. The other questions in the commercial, CON29DW commercial, are the same as the residential. And like I say, we did a webinar on those before. We'll probably do one again as well in due time. But please get in touch if you need a copy of the recording of that, or find it on the website. So additional questions on the commercial, that's those covered off. So now we're just going to go through a couple of points that will help us all and ensure that you get a speedy return of your report, as well as its accuracy, of course. So giving us as much information up front as you can will really help avoid delays in us returning your search. And the starting point is deciding on the correct product. So when you're deciding on which product to purchase, a commercial or a residential, you'd think it'd be very, very straightforward. But again, as is life, there are some nuances you need to be aware of. A commercial property means land or buildings used or proposed to be used for commercial activities. So that could be an office block, retail units, trading estate units, working farms, warehousing building, could be a development site, and commercial buildings where actually the use is as dwellings. Okay, so it's a horrible word, isn't it? Dwellings, a house, a flat, a property as we know it. And it could be that residential units is the usage is the intention of what actually is a commercial property, such as an Airbnb or a guest house. But what's key is whether it's registered with the water company for commercial billing. That's kind of the key, really. So if it's got commercial billing as a fact of the property, you need a commercial report. And most of our T's and C's, God bless them, but they're normally a pain, aren't they? But most of them are really clear. It's your responsibility to inquire and purchase the correct product for your client. Ask for our help. If there's any doubt at all, you can't get to see the bill, or you're unaware that it's commercial billing and it's really not obvious, then ask us for help. And if we can get hold of the commercial, of the billing address details, then we can go off and find if it's a commercial or residential for you. So that correct billing address is essential. That's the sort of information. A current occupier, maybe a company name, that can also help us locate the correct address and make sure that the correct building and the account is searched. Some members do this slightly differently, but there are times when additional connections can be requested. So you're asking for a report on a piece of land, and unlike a domestic property, a dwelling, there isn't just one connection. There could be multiples, could be outbuildings, could be multiple units on one trading estate. We are at your service. Essentially, we'll do what you require as members for producing this report, but you need to let us know. Talk to us. It might just be a note when you place the order, a follow-up email, ring up and double check, or we may come back to you if we find multiple connections in a boundary property's boundary. We may come back and say, well, there's 4 connections there actually. What do you want to do? What do you need? Okay, so you could check with the supplier, the relevant supplier, on what's best for you in that area. Finally, just a little thing on land at. It's worth pointing out. So land at in the address, when you submit it to us, it might include buildings within that boundary. And so sometimes there can be delays if we're not sure if you want those connections checked or not. Now, it might be you're not. It could just be, I know an example passed my desk recently. It's just a feed to a trough in a field. But it is a connection. It may be metered, I doubt it, but it may be, it's there and it's supplying water to a trough. So are you bothered about knowing whether that connection is there or not, and what the status of it is? Are there bills attached? Find out from the seller. So again, talk to us. What would really speed things up is ensuring we know on each search, each separately in its own right, are connections wanted if we spot one. If not, if it's just a land at search, then we can do a general report on that land. But agree the direction of travel, I guess I'm saying, with the supplier if there's any doubt at all. Okay, so we've covered off the additional questions. We've gone through a couple of tips for ensuring a speedy return. We're belting through this quite well. It's 20 past. Keep an eye on the time. So finally, I'm just going to touch on common queries we get and common things you can do and supply to us when ordering the report that will help reduce queries. Probably the most common query on commercial searches relate to billing and connections. So they tend to be linked in, where the address queries, we're not quite sure, which one you mean. And so knowing the billing address can be the key to removing that barrier and making things quick. Now, there's a couple of changes in the industry in recent years, in that often now there's a wholesaler of water supply and there's a retailer. Commercial customers can choose. Okay, so trying to remember when that came in, but there's over 1 million or something commercial properties now, commercial accounts now, where the customer can choose who their retailer is. So it can be a bit of a challenge for us when we have to create the commercial CON29DW, the provider of that product, if we're not aware of the retailer. So we may not have all the information. So, it could be that we come to you and request things like meter serial numbers or SPID. I've got a couple of images here. I've remembered to pull them up this time. So SPID number, okay, which is the supply point identifier. That's really helpful alongside an account number or instead of it even. Sometimes the account number is the responsibility of the retailer. So it means nothing to us back in as the wholesaler. I can only apologise for this complication, but that's the world we're living in. It could be both sometimes, of course. The customer could have stuck with the incumbent wholesaler as their retailer, but to kind of ensure anonymity almost, and for the waters, excuse the pun, not to get muddied by the wholesaler retailer kind of relationship. Often the wholesaler can't see any of that information. The account number and the bill payer is all to do with the retailer. I hope I've made that clear now. So we often don't see account numbers and stuff. But the supply point identifier, the SPID, that does belong to those of us who create the CON29DW. That does belong to the wholesaler as a meter or an asset. So that can be used to locate the correct connection address. Okay. One of the most common queries around easements as well, the extra question of the easements, is getting a copy of the easement or the way leave. Now, some of the members can supply that, but some will just point you to a legal department within the water company, within the sort of mothership, if you like. And there could sometimes be a charge for that. Now, the homeowner or the landowner may have a copy of it or initially, but if the information is available by the DWSN member, they'll get it to you on request, but there may be a charge. The question simply answers whether there is one or not. Okay, that went quicker than I thought, actually. So just one last thing, and this follows on from the difficulty about perhaps knowing some of the information. 2017 it was, that, it's on the slide, that Ofwat opened the market up to business retail for water and wastewater. And there's 1.2 million businesses in England currently who can just choose their retailer. They can go, it's a free market. There are some logos of 20 or so retailers that are out there at the moment the business customers can choose from. So in some cases, the incumbent water and sewage company, I'm touching myself because I mean Anglian Water. So for me, it could be Severn Trent, Owen's company and others. We could be both the wholesaler and the retailer. Happy days. All bits of information should be available to us. But there's an impact on the commercial in that a couple of the questions, who bills for property and who bills for sewage and who bills for water, trivia fans, question 4.2 and question 4.3, it could be that we just won't know that and we won't answer it because we can't see. So the wholesaler cannot see who the retailer is because it's, another pun, it's fluid. A customer can choose in whichever retailer they wish from 1 month to the next almost, probably. So we don't get that. So we don't answer those questions. We may just say, speak to your retailer. or some such wording, bit better than that, but something that says we don't know this actually. It's not that we're not allowed to. I think there may be some not allowed to, but we don't get sight of it. We're not privy to that, which is right and proper. Otherwise, there could be all sorts of crossover issues of a wholesaler ringing up to try and switch you back and all this kind of stuff. It's dealt with in the open market and certainly nothing to do with us. It's worth noting, though, that this has a knock-on effect. So it could be that some of the support we want to give you as a member who created the product compared to the residential, with that change in the structure of the market, we just may not be able to see certain things. And some things the retailer's responsible for taking ownership of. So the billing, tariff charges, change of use of a property, things like that. So that's now down to the retailer and not the producer of the CON29, unless it's the same, unless the wholesaler is the retailer on any individual basis. So just please bear that in mind if we're looking to resolve issues, regarding a discrepancy in the report, or make sure that some information is correct. We can amend that report based on whatever gets found, but we can't really instigate that because we don't know which of those retailers it is, and it's right that sort of arm's length distance is kept. Okay, so that's kind of it on the body of the presentation. Really, we're doing okay for time. It's 2:26. We've got lots of things available to you. We've got a great website, the DWSN website. That will find it, but it's actually entitled www.con29DW.co.uk. That's got things like a postcode lookup search engine in it. So if you're unsure as to who your provider of the CON29 is, then you can put a postcode in there and it will tell you who it is. It also has a neat service that will inform you if the incumbent is a NAV, is someone other than the DWSN member who produces the CON currently. So a NAV stands for, again, Owen, help me out here.
New appointment and variation.
New appointment and variation. That's it.
Yeah.
So there's IWNL, there's Icosa Water, there's Albion Water. There's several of them that have little enclaves, if you like, within the larger standard water company area. So if known, then that postcode checker will confirm that for you. You can also find this and other ones of our webinars, which we've just started doing, to be frank, on the website. And you can see copies and recordings of them. I'd recommend you check them out if you want to know anything. They're only this half-hour length, so you can kind of whiz through the rubbish and get to the meat of it in the middle if you wish. And you'll see the slides as well. And finally, speak to the members, speak to the DWSN members. We've been doing this a long time. Geodesys within Anglian Water, we're heading towards 30 years having done this. Some of the others are of a similar nature, high 20 years anyway, over 25 years. So we kind of know what we're doing. We believe our report is the gold standard that's available out there. So come and talk to us. We can get through almost anything, I think, with you alongside us. So don't be scared to get in touch. Even if it's just a general question, then just give us a call and we can help you out. Okay, so the Q&A has been available to you throughout. I'm not sure we've had any questions on it. And
we've had one so far, Johnny. So
okay.
We've got one here. So do all CON29DW providers deal with land at in the same way? So you pointed out, some of these reports come in with land at a certain area. So does everybody treat those in the same way?
Not necessarily. I mean, again, it can be quite complex, and the data that they're accessing to answer the questions given that address, land at, field to the north of the village of Harborough or whatever. I've made that up, but it can be quite difficult. So no, there isn't a standard crib sheet for everybody to do it the same way, because some of the data that is available is different. So whoever you're ordering from, which is a geographical question, get in touch with them if you're in any doubt. And as you hopefully use them again and again and again, you'll start to know those nuances that will help you get a prompt and accurate reply when it's a land at. They're all slightly different. I have a product, for example, that deals with just single connections within a certain area, but you need a different product if there's 3 connections or more. And we've got one that caters for that, so that we can do it accurately and still show you a viable map with the details on it. But some other other providers may have just one product up to a higher land area. It all just depends on nuances within each company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another question: if land has a public sewer running through it, and the client does not request details of the wayleaves or easements, when would that become an issue to them? And is it an issue, other than potentially losing revenue for the agreement if not compulsory?
Well, I wouldn't worry about the revenue of the agreement. It's normally very small. It's normally it's not peppercorn rent of £1. It's more than that, but it's in the grand scheme of things of land. So I wouldn't worry about that. I'd worry much more about understanding that is public services, public assets running through that land for all sorts of reasons. Not just for access. You're enjoying that land. It may not be farmland or getting built on it. Well, it could be built on. It could be your garden, a nice big garden. Apart from enjoying that, and you've got a a high vis jacket decked out water company employee wandering on to do some essential maintenance or check something out, and you cannot stop him because of that right. So apart from that, it could have issues around buildovers or extensions or development of that land. It's normally a larger piece of land, farmland, etc., which could impact that. So if somebody buys a piece of land with the intention of doing X, Y, and Z, and doesn't find out if there's a wayleave agreement or just if there's a public pipe under the ground, then they're asking for trouble, really. And I know in the room here, and when you were looking at about 25, I'm sure very diligent, very risk averse, correctly, conveyancers and solicitors who I hope would advise their client to try and find out if there's something under that land. It really is. Somebody saying, "Oh, don't worry about it." I wouldn't want to be there. I wouldn't want them to be your client, if I'm honest.
Just one more at the moment. How do you still have access to the metered data but not the customer billing data? So I mean, I can pick. You've explained this sort of as we've gone along.
Kind of.
It's the wholesale retail split thing again.
Yeah, the wholesaler is responsible for the asset and the pipes and the physical side of things, and so that SPID remains and a meter number remains, but the billing, who the bill goes to, the account number of the billing, the address that it's addressed to, that all now belongs to the retailer if it has switched. So we don't get sight of that. We don't have access to their records and their data, but the physical part of the asset, which the wholesaler still does. Yeah.
There's a follow-up question actually from Sandy Hennessy, who asked the previous question about the easement. So if there is a public sewer across land that is shown on a CON29DW, would these always have a wayleave or easement of some form?
No, not necessarily. Absolutely not. No. So there's a great question, actually. So some wayleaves and easements are compulsory. Did I touch on that in the slide? I think I did, actually. Sometimes often they're assumed as well, especially in a much more modern environment, where somebody specifically is building a large housing estate. So you can imagine pylons going across a field, and they're building a massive housing estate. There'd be that great big old gap, wouldn't there, with a channel where all the electricity pylons are standing in between two halves of a housing estate. There, of course, will be no expectation that the company isn't allowed to get at them, maintain them. Same with if it's under the ground. But there would not automatically be a wayleave or an easement. No. Is that the question? Would there automatically be?
Exactly.
No,
so it's just saying, if there was a sewer through a property that was shown on a CON29DW, would it have a wayleave or easement?
No.
You get sewer through land all the time, obviously.
All the time, yeah.
Sewers run by gravity, so the topography of the land dictates where sewers run a lot of the time. So if it's downhill, that's the direction which they run, and therefore they can't always be pushed around the roads like water pipes can, which are under pressure. So as a result, you often get them going through people's gardens.
And sometimes it's okay. I mean, as okay as that can be. And another question in both the residential and commercial report will answer whether there's been a build over agreement for that, because it could be there's a conservatory or an extension over it, but it's been done in such a way that that's been agreed with the water company and permission's been given. So it could be that it was slightly changed or amended to allow free and easy access, or there's an access hole. I'm sure there's a chamber. I'm sure there's a better word for it than that, chamber, to be able to get to it, should need be. So that's why that question is important on both CON29s about build overs. Is there a build over S104, I think it's called, that gives that permission? It's okay. And then even if it hasn't been built on yet, but the permission exists, then that's much clearer for the client. But no, don't presume there will always be an easement and away leave. Yeah. Okay, good.
Well, I think that seems to be the end of it.
2:35. Yes, so 2:35. So we're all done, folks. Again, just to reiterate, get in touch if you need help with any of this. CON29DW, that's our bag. The members of DWSN, we create them for each of our area, and we know what we're talking about, quite frankly. It may not seem it on some of my elements, but no, honestly, we do. So get in touch if you need any help.
I think, for clarity, it's not going to be either of us answering the phone when you ring up, fortunately, is it, Johnny?
No, good. Which is
should put all your minds at ease.
Very beneficial to anyone who rings up. My esteemed colleagues who know a lot more than I do. Yeah. Quite. But thanks for your time again, folks. We must reiterate that because we know everybody's busy, and we hope we found it useful.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Cheers, everybody.